Hello and welcome to another analysis behind the news. Depending on the media you're digesting, your review of what occurred with the ObamaCare repeal can widely range from the disappointing leadership ability of the House Speaker and the President to the absolute euphoria that Obamacare was not replaced with yet another government-run plan. Aside from the fact that the President chose the wrong team to support, a critical factor that we need to recognize is what happened with the House Freedom Caucus. Though small in number, the Pew Research Group identified about 36 House Republicans in 2015, the caucus stood its ground regarding the stance of repealing Obamacare and not replacing it with another government-run program. This clearly visible split demonstrates the will of constitutionalists to stand up to the establishment Republicans, who have shown themselves to be no different than Democrats in growing the size and scope of the federal government. And we should all recognize that any time the federal government is allowed to do so, the balance of liberty versus tyranny tips toward tyranny. After all, if the government can make you buy a product or service, then where are its limitations? And if we are replacing one government program that was created outside the constitutional limitations, then why would we want to replace it with another outside of those limitations? This is why spending is completely out of control, and why we are anywhere between $20 and $100 trillion in debt. Recall what we previously mentioned in these videos, that the Republicans passed a clean repeal and not replace bill when President Obama was in office, which evidently was political theater, as it had no way of being signed by the President. Yet, under a Republican Congress and President, a clean repeal isn't even considered. What does that tell you? Again, it adds more credence to the fact that we are not in a Republican versus Democrat fight. We are in a liberty versus tyranny fight. No matter which political party is in power, the federal government continues to grow. And let's not be so naive to think that this is purely an accident. Powerful groups, including globalists and many special interest groups, are using government as a tool to further their agenda, which has been leading us further and further from our foundation of limited government and responsible citizenry. Never forget Lord Acton's famous and highly accurate quote that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The federal government is a great example of this. The example of the House Freedom Caucus shows us what we at the John Birch Society have said for decades. You do not need a majority to get things done in D.C. For an organized minority of dedicated constitutional patriots can make the needed influence to get the job done. In fact, this is exactly how the John Birch Society operates. Small groups of members, called chapters, are locally organized and become part of a national effort to educate and activate community decision makers on specific issues that are intended to expose threats against American liberty and the country's independence. And much like the Freedom Caucus has found out, we are battling not just against those that are directly opposite of conservatives, but also our supposed friends who claim they are conservative, yet operate in a completely reckless manner when it comes to the Constitution. The key is to enforce the Constitution in order to bring back the federal government into its strict prescribed confines. Regarding the efforts of the President this last week, Trump hitched his wagon to the wrong team. All through his presidential campaign, he took a stand against globalism and promoted Americanism. But Americanism isn't supporting one unconstitutional program to replace another. It's about getting back to the Constitution and obeying its limitations. It's time Trump stood up to the globalists in his own party. Up until now, the establishment Republicans have gone along with what was the perceived Trump agenda of cutting government. Yet, when it comes to entitlements, all of which are not within the scope of the federal government, they turn tail and run in the opposite direction of liberty. Why? Well, the Des Moines Register offers this headline: David Young loses support from Paul Ryan-run PAC over health care vote. It reports, a spokesman for a super PAC run by House Speaker Paul Ryan said on Thursday that it will pull back support for Young, a Republican whose district includes the Des Moines Metro, according to the Wall Street Journal. The hardball political move by the Congressional Leadership Fund comes 24 hours after Young announced publicly he'd be a no vote on the American Health Care Act. The PAC has already said it would open an office in Des Moines to aid Young's 2018 re-election campaign. It continues, CLF, or the Congressional Leadership Fund, will be terminating our lease because David Young has decided not to support President Trump and House leadership. PAC Executive Director Corey Bliss told the Journal, at this time, the Congressional Leadership Fund has no plans to spend any money for David Young this cycle, but we wish him the best of luck. And Representative Young fired back with this from one of his aides. David Young, from day one, has said that whoever the speaker is, the majority leader or president, they are not his bosses. Young aide James Carstensen told the Des Moines Register on Thursday, his bosses are the people of the 3rd District of Iowa. So he is standing up to establishment leadership, and someone who is not is Representative Ted Poe from Texas. According to CNN, he announced Sunday he has resigned from the conservative House Freedom Caucus over its opposition to the Republican health care plan, becoming the group's first public casualty in the fallout over its role in defeating the bill. In order to deliver on the conservative agenda we have promised the American people for 8 years, we must come together to find solutions to move this country forward, the Texas Republican said in a statement. Saying no is easy, leading is hard, but that is what we were elected to do. Leaving this caucus will allow me to be a more effective member of Congress and the advocate for the people of Texas. It is time to lead. And Representative, just where is it that you're leading? Away from the Constitution and straight into the arms of the rhinos. Now, watch where this article is heading. It continues, in the days since, the House leadership announced the Republican Party would move on from its 7-year promise to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, and the House Freedom Caucus has taken a large share of the blame for the defeat. One GOP leadership aide predicted that Poe's defection, which Fox News first reported, could be just the first of the defections from the group. You see what they're doing? Punishing the group just as President Trump and Speaker Ryan are doing. It continues later in here. The president felt burned by the Freedom Caucus's rejection of the compromise, a White House official had said. It wasn't about the policy, the official told CNN. It didn't matter what policy we made because they, the Freedom Caucus, didn't want a deal. We were captives in an internal House caucus fight. The Freedom Caucus had too much interest in killing this to send a message to Speaker Ryan, which basically says, you have too much power. On Sunday morning, Trump wasted little time publicly rebuking the conservative group. Democrats are smiling in D.C. that the Freedom Caucus, with the help of Club for Growth and Heritage, have saved Planned Parenthood and ObamaCare, the president tweeted. Really? So we just throw our hands up in defeat and say it cannot be done because not everyone is on board? How about we stop this political theater and move on to actually repealing Obamacare, free of any government strings or PAC money? The American people voted for change and not for politics as usual. If this is what we can expect of future battles, then Trump's rhetoric of rolling back government is just that, rhetoric. A reactive movement began with the more conservative members of the House under the thumb of former Speaker Boehner, and it has only gotten stronger due to the antics of Speaker Ryan. If Trump is unable to separate himself from the establishment rhinos that are surrounding him, then he will only feel a greater resistance coming from the Freedom Caucus. Instead, he ought to recognize the opportunities that lie with working with them to roll back government and stop looking at these situations as one to create compromise. Never compromise your principles. Never compromise the Constitution. Instead, obey it. And to become part of the movement that is pushing America back to its founding principles, visit jbs.org and join. And be sure to like and share this video with family and friends. Sign up for our e-newsletters and subscribe to our social media channels. Until next time, we'll see you then.